My fiancée left me for her boss, he got fired, and dumped her. Now she wants me back. But I made her regret everything. I'm not the type to post my business online, but after what went down, I need to get this out somewhere. Maybe it'll help someone else see the signs I missed. Or maybe I just need to write it down to prove it actually happened. 3 years. That's how long Vivian and I were together before I proposed. We met through mutual friends at a barbecue, hit it off over terrible jokes and cheap beer, and somehow turned that into something real. She was working reception at a small hotel chain back then, talking about wanting more from her career but never quite making the move. I was a project manager for a mid-sized construction firm, steady work, decent pay, nothing flashy but solid. We moved in together after a year. Split the rent on a 2-bedroom downtown. I picked up more hours, saved aggressively, and eventually bought the place outright. Put both our names on it because that's what you do when you're building a life with someone, right? She cried when I showed her the papers. Said I was the first person who ever made her feel secure. 6 months ago, I proposed. Nothing elaborate, just us on the balcony with the city lights and a ring I'd been paying off for 8 months. She said yes before I finished the question. Everything changed 2 months later. Vivian landed a position as a corporate events coordinator at Belmont Hospitality Group. Big firm, bigger paycheck, corner office dreams. I was proud of her. Took her out to celebrate, told her this was just the beginning. She agreed. I didn't realize she wasn't talking about us. The shift was gradual but obvious once I looked back. New wardrobe, tailored and expensive. Late nights at the office that turned into weekends at networking events. Her phone stayed face down on every surface, angled away during every conversation. When I asked about her day, she'd give me one-word answers and change the subject. You wouldn't understand the dynamics, she said once. It's a different world. I let it slide. Figured she was adjusting to the corporate culture, finding her footing. I kept working my projects, pulling 12-hour days on a new municipal contract, coming home to an empty apartment more often than not. Then came the night she sat me down. It was a Thursday. I remember because I'd just gotten approval on a budget extension and wanted to celebrate. I walked in, saw her on the couch with her hands folded like she was at a business meeting, and knew, this isn't working, she said. Calm. Practiced. I've outgrown this. Outgrown us. I sat across from her and waited. You're a good person, she continued, and I could hear the script in her voice. But you don't match my trajectory anymore. I need someone who operates at my level. Someone who understands ambition. I didn't argue. Didn't ask her to explain. Just asked, when are you leaving? Tonight. She already had bags packed in the bedroom. Already had the ring off her finger, back in its box, sitting on the kitchen counter like a returned purchase. Said she was staying with a colleague while she figured out her next move. I watched her load 2 suitcases into her car. Didn't beg. Didn't chase her down the hallway with promises to change. Just stood in the doorway while she drove away. 3 days later, my phone buzzed during a site inspection. Vivian, I found someone who matches my ambition. Don't contact me. I deleted the message and went back to work. The following week, I started boxing up the last of her things. Clothes she'd left in the closet, books on the shelf, random makeup in the bathroom drawer. Most of it was garbage, but I figured I'd be decent about it and drop it at her mom's place. I was clearing out the nightstand when I found it. Folded papers, tucked under a stack of old magazines. Printed emails. I almost threw them out without reading, but something made me unfold the first page. To Vivian.Pierce@.com. From shayes@.com. Subject, last night. The first line stopped me cold. I can't stop thinking about you. When can I see you again? I sat on the edge of the bed and read every single page. There were 11 pages total. I read them twice. The emails went back 4 months. 4 months of can't wait to see you and last night was incredible and we need to be more careful. 4 months of planning our future and discussing when the time is right. 4 months of my fiancé building an exit strategy while I was pricing out wedding venues. Sterling Hayes. VP of Operations. I googled him on my phone while sitting there surrounded by her leftover belongings. Mid-50s, married, 2 college-aged kids based on the family photo on his LinkedIn. 20 years older than Vivian. The kind of guy who wore expensive suits and talked about synergy in company-wide emails. The timeline made me physically sick. Not because I was heartbroken, I'd already processed that, but because I'd been so goddamn blind. Every late Tuesday suddenly made sense. Those strategy sessions she mentioned over weekend coffee. The defensive edge in her voice when I asked innocent questions about her day. Sterling thinks we should pivot our Q3 approach, she'd said once, casual, like she was discussing the weather. I'd asked, who's Sterling? My VP. He's brilliant. Really gets the industry. I remembered the way her eyes lit up when she said his name. Should have known then. I took photos of every page with my phone, then tucked the originals into a folder I kept in my desk. Didn't throw them away. Didn't burn them in some dramatic gesture. Just filed them like evidence. Because that's what they were. Then I went to work. The municipal infrastructure project I'd been leading was hitting its stride. 3 months ahead of schedule, 8% under budget, 0 safety incidents. My boss had pulled me aside the week before and mentioned they were looking at senior director positions. Said my name was on the shortlist. I threw myself into it. 16-hour days. Site inspections at dawn. Budget reviews until midnight. Anything to keep my brain occupied and my career trajectory upward. That's when the small things started going wrong. First, a proposal I'd written for a commercial development bid got leaked to a competitor. They submitted something nearly identical 2 days before our deadline, undercutting us by exactly the margin I'd calculated as our minimum. Then a client meeting I'd scheduled for weeks got mysteriously rescheduled without my knowledge. I showed up to an empty conference room while my team sat confused in the office. Documents started disappearing from my shared drive. Nothing catastrophic, just enough to create friction. Budget spreadsheets I knew I'd saved. Contractor contact lists. Project timeline drafts. I started paying attention. Every mishap connected to information only a handful of people had access to. And most of it was information I'd discussed at home. Client names I'd mentioned over dinner. Project details I'd talked through while Vivian half listened from the couch. Budget figures I'd celebrated hitting after long weeks. Information she would have had. Information she could have passed along to someone who might benefit from me failing. I didn't panic. Didn't accuse anyone or make a scene. Just started documenting everything. Screenshots of deleted files with timestamps. Emails showing when information went missing. A timeline of when I discussed each project detail at home and when the corresponding problem occurred. One of our mutual friends, Greg, caught me at a coffee shop on a Saturday morning. "Hey man, I heard about you and Vivian. You doing okay?" "Yeah," I said. She left. "I'm fine, that's it?" "You're just fine?" I shrugged. "What else is there to say?" She made her choice. Greg looked like he wanted to press, but I changed the subject to his kid's soccer season and he let it drop. That night, I was reviewing contracts in my home office when an email notification popped up. Unknown sender. Work address. Subject line that made me pause. Subject, "You're not the only one Sterling Hayes screwed over." No message body. Just a link to what looked like an internal forum at Belmont Hospitality Group. I clicked it. The page loaded slowly, revealing a thread titled Anonymous Workplace Concerns. Dozens of posts. Maybe hundreds. All talking about the same person, Sterling Hayes. I started reading, and with every comment, the picture became clearer, and so much worse than I'd thought. The forum was a mess of corporate speak and carefully worded anger. People trying to report problems without getting identified. But once you read past the professional language, the stories were all the same. Anonymous employee number 39. Promises of advancement that never materialized after personal relationships ended. Anonymous employee number 83. Pressured to share confidential information from previous employers. Told it was industry standard research. Anonymous employee number 112. Made to feel special and irreplaceable. Then discarded the moment someone younger/newer arrived. There were dozens more. Years worth. A pattern so obvious it hurt to read. Sterling Hayes was a predator with a system. He identified ambitious people, usually younger, usually newer to corporate environments. He made promises. Offered mentorship that became inappropriate. Leveraged his position for personal gain. And when he was done, or when things got risky, he cut them loose and moved on. Vivian wasn't special. She was a type. I kept reading and found something that made my hands stop moving on the keyboard. Anonymous employee number 91. Used personal information gained through relationships to benefit competitive bids. Made it seem like team research. There it was. Sterling hadn't just manipulated Vivian emotionally. He'd used her to get information about my projects. Information she had access to because we lived together. Because I trusted her. Because I talked about work over dinner like a normal person in a normal relationship. She'd fed him client names, budget ranges, timeline expectations. Everything he'd need to either poach opportunities or sabotage my bids through his industry connections. I wasn't paranoid. The mishaps at work weren't coincidence. They were industrial espionage, and my ex-fiancée was the asset. I spent the next 3 days building a case. Every email I'd sent Vivian mentioning work details. Every document that had disappeared. Every leaked proposal. I created a timeline showing when information left my possession and when corresponding problems occurred. Cross-referenced it with the emails I'd found in her nightstand. The pattern was undeniable. Friday morning, I requested a meeting with our company's legal counsel and my direct supervisor. I laid it out clean. Showed them the timeline. Explained I'd been the victim of information theft, not the source of leaks. Provided the printed emails between Vivian and Sterling as evidence of their relationship and access to my work product. Our legal counsel, a sharp woman named Patricia, reviewed everything twice. You're saying your former partner was actively providing proprietary information to a competitor? Through her superior, yes. I don't think she understood what she was doing initially, but the result was the same. Patricia nodded slowly. This explains the anomalies we've been tracking. We need to file a formal report. Document your cooperation. Make it clear you're the victim here. They did exactly that. By Monday, I had a letter in my file confirming I'd reported suspected espionage and provided evidence of the breach. I was protected. Meanwhile, word got around through industry contacts that Belmont Hospitality Group had launched an internal investigation into their VP of operations. Multiple employees had filed formal complaints. HR was involved. Outside counsel was reviewing. The dominoes were falling. My project, despite the attempted sabotage, came in 3 months early and 12% under budget. The client sent a personal letter of commendation. My boss called me into his office on a Wednesday afternoon. Senior project director, he said, sliding an offer letter across his desk. Effective immediately. You've earned it. I'd earned it by being better than the people trying to tear me down. That evening, I took my team out to celebrate at a steakhouse downtown. Good food, decent wine, everyone relaxed and happy. I just ordered dessert when my phone buzzed with a news alert. I glanced at the screen and felt everything click into place. Industry alert, Sterling Hayes terminated following internal review, Belmont Hospitality Group issues statement. I opened the article and read the headline twice to make sure I wasn't imagining it. The man who'd destroyed my engagement and tried to destroy my career was done, and I had a feeling Vivian's world was about to get a lot smaller. The article was brief but brutal. Belmont Hospitality Group has terminated Sterling Hayes, Vice President of Operations, following an internal investigation into workplace conduct violations. The termination is effective immediately and for cause. Mr. Hayes will not receive severance compensation. The company is committed to maintaining a professional environment for all employees. For cause. No severance. That's corporate speak for we have documentation and you're lucky we're not suing you. I read the statement to myself twice while my team ate dessert and talked about the playoffs. Nobody noticed I'd gone quiet. When someone asked if I was alright, I said I'd just gotten good news about a permit approval and left it at that. Over the next week, more details leaked through industry channels. Sterling had been walked out by security. Company car repossessed in the parking lot. Access badges deactivated while he was still in the building. His name scrubbed from the website within hours. Belmont wasn't playing around. When you terminate a VP for cause and make it public, you're sending a message. They'd found something concrete. Multiple somethings, based on the rumors. I didn't reach out to Vivian. Didn't check her social media. Didn't ask mutual friends. Just kept my head down and worked. But information finds you anyway. 2 weeks after Sterling's termination, I ran into Greg again. Same coffee shop, same Saturday morning routine. You hear about Vivian? He asked, sliding into the chair across from me. No, she's a mess, man. Julie saw her last week, said she was crying in her car outside a grocery store. On the phone with someone, just falling apart. I sipped my coffee and didn't respond. Julie tried to go talk to her, but Vivian saw her and drove off. Wouldn't even roll down the window. That's unfortunate, I said. Greg studied me. You really don't care, do you? I care that someone's struggling. But she's not my responsibility anymore. He nodded slowly. Fair enough. Just thought you should know. What I didn't tell Greg was that I'd already heard through other channels what had actually happened to Vivian. Sterling had dumped her the day he got terminated. Blocked her number. Refused to see her. When she showed up at his house, his wife answered the door and threatened to call the police. Sterling had apparently thrown Vivian under the bus during the investigation, claiming she'd pursued him and that he'd tried to maintain professional boundaries. Classic move. Protect yourself, burn the liability. Vivian had burned her own bridges on the way up. Stopped returning calls from old friends when she got the Belmont job. Talked down about her previous life at enough parties that people remembered. Her social circle at work had been entirely built around Sterling's influence. When he fell, she had nothing. I didn't take pleasure in it. Didn't feel vindicated or satisfied. Just observed the consequences playing out exactly as they should. My promotion became official. New office with actual windows. A team of 12 reporting to me. Salary that made the last 3 years of grinding feel worth it. I started traveling for site consultations. Spent a week in Phoenix reviewing a mixed-use development, another in Denver for a municipal expansion. I dated casually. Nothing serious. A few dinners, some decent conversations, no pressure. Took up hiking on weekends. Read books I'd been meaning to get to for years. Life moved forward. 4 months passed. Vivian became a ghost. Someone I used to know. The engagement felt like something that had happened to a different version of me. I was home on a Friday evening, reviewing plans for a weekend trip to the mountains, when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. Delivery drivers usually just left packages. My building had a buzzer system for guests. I walked to the door and checked the peephole. My hand froze on the deadbolt. Vivian stood in the hallway. Red eyes. Defeated posture. She looked smaller somehow, like life had compressed her. She wasn't looking at the door, just staring at her feet, arms wrapped around herself. She hadn't buzzed up. Someone must have let her in downstairs. She raised her hand to knock, hesitated, then pressed the doorbell again. I stood there, perfectly still, and made a decision. Then I unlocked the door and opened it. Her eyes met mine and I watched something like relief flicker across her face. "Hi," she said. Voice barely above a whisper. I didn't say anything. Just stepped aside and gestured toward the living room. She walked in slowly, taking in the space like she was visiting a museum of her old life. Everything was the same but different. Same furniture, different arrangement. Same walls, new artwork. I'd made the place mine after she left. She sat on the edge of the couch, our old couch, and folded her hands in her lap. I took the chair across from her and waited. "Thank you for not slamming the door," she said. "Why would I do that?" She looked up, surprised. "I don't know. I thought you'd be angry." "I'm not angry." And I wasn't. Anger requires emotional investment. I was just curious about why she was here. She took a breath. "I need to explain what happened." "Okay, Sterling." He got in my head. I know how that sounds, but it's true. He made me feel like I was capable of so much more than I'd ever been told. Like I was being held back. I nodded, watching her carefully. He talked about his vision for the company, about my potential, about how people like us understood ambition differently. And I believed him. Her voice cracked. "I believed everything." "What did he promise you?" "Partnership. Not just at work, in life." He said his marriage was over, that he was just waiting for the right time to leave. That we'd build something together once he was free. She laughed bitterly. I was so stupid. What happened after he was fired? Her face crumpled. He blocked my number the same day. Wouldn't see me. I went to his house and his wife answered. She knew everything. Called me a homewrecker and threatened to call the cops if I came back. "Did you try to contact him after that?" "For 2 weeks straight. Emails, texts, showing up at places I thought he'd be. He avoided me completely. Then I got a cease and desist letter from his lawyer." She wiped her eyes. "He acted like I didn't exist. Like I'd never existed." I kept my expression neutral. "That must have been difficult." Everything fell apart. Work relationships were all through him. My friends. I'd pushed them away when I got the promotion. Thought I was too good for them. God, I was such an idiot. She looked at me with desperate eyes. "You were the only real thing I had, and I threw it away. I told myself you weren't ambitious enough, that you didn't understand what I needed." But Sterling planted those thoughts. He made me see you as an obstacle instead of the person who actually supported me. "Is that what you came here to tell me?" "I came to tell you I was wrong. About everything. About you, about us, about what mattered." She leaned forward. "I've spent 4 months realizing that the person who actually had my back was the one I left. You were building something real while I was chasing smoke." Her hand reached toward mine. I didn't pull away, but I didn't reach back either. "I know I don't deserve another chance. I know I hurt you. But I'm asking anyway." Her voice shook. "I want to come home. I want to fix this. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you if you let me." I studied her face. The tears were real. The regret looked genuine. She'd practiced this speech, probably for days. "You said Sterling convinced you I was holding you back." "He did. He made me think." "What specifically did he say about me?" She hesitated. "That you were comfortable. Content with mediocrity. That I'd regret staying with someone who didn't challenge me to grow." "Did you tell him about my work?" "What?" "My projects. Clients. Did you discuss them with him?" Her eyes flickered. "Sometimes. Just casual conversation." "Why?" I nodded slowly, like I was processing. Let the silence sit for a moment. Then I stood up. "Wait here." I walked to my home office and closed the door behind me. Opened the locked drawer in my desk and pulled out the manila envelope I'd prepared months ago. The one I'd hoped I'd never need but knew I probably would. 2 minutes passed. I heard her shift on the couch, clear her throat. Probably thinking she'd gotten through to me. Probably feeling hopeful for the first time in months. I opened the door and walked back into the living room. She looked up as I sat down across from her again, placing the envelope on the coffee table between us. "What's that?" she asked. I didn't answer. Just opened it and pulled out the first document. I laid the first page on the table facing her. The email she'd forgotten in the nightstand drawer. Sterling's name in the header. Her face went pale. "This is dated 4 months before you left," I said calmly. "Want to read it, or should I summarize?" "Where did you get that?" "You left it behind. Along with 10 other pages." I pulled out the rest of the emails and spread them across the table like evidence at a trial. 4 months of planning your exit while wearing my engagement ring. 4 months of "I can't stop thinking about you and when can I see you again." She stared at the papers, frozen. "That's not even the interesting part." I pulled out another document. "This is a timeline. See these dates? That's when I mentioned the Riverside commercial project at home. 3 days later, a competitor submitted a bid using my exact cost structure. Undercut us by the margin I'd calculated as minimum. I didn't. This one," I continued, pulling out another page, "is when I talked about the Monroe client over dinner. You asked about my day. I told you we were close to signing. 2 days later, the meeting got rescheduled without my knowledge. Turns out someone called the client claiming to be from my office. I kept going, document after document. Each one showing a clear pattern. Information I'd shared at home. Problems that followed. Sterling's firm benefiting. The timeline was undeniable. You fed him everything," I said. "Client names. Budget numbers. Timeline details. Everything he needed to either steal opportunities or sabotage my bids. I didn't know that's what he was doing." Her voice cracked. "He just asked about your work sometimes. Said he was interested in the industry. I thought we were just talking. You thought a VP of a competing firm was just interested in my proprietary project details?" She started crying. I wasn't thinking clearly. "He made me feel important. Made me feel like you were special." I nodded. "I read the forum posts. You weren't special, Vivian. You were a pattern. He's been doing this for years." I pulled out the final set of documents. Official letterhead from my company's legal department. "I figured out what you were doing 3 months ago. Filed everything with corporate counsel. Showed them the emails, the timeline, the evidence. Made it crystal clear I was the victim of industrial espionage, not the source." Her hands shook as she stared at the papers. "That's why I got promoted. They knew I'd been sabotaged and I'd handled it professionally. Documented everything. Protected company interests." I leaned forward. "While you were trying to destroy my career, I was building a case that turned into a promotion. I wasn't trying to destroy you. You weaponized my trust. You took information I shared with you because we were building a life together, and you handed it to someone who used it against me. Whether you understood what he was doing or not, you made that choice." She was sobbing now, makeup running down her face. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. There's one more thing you should know." I gathered the papers back into the envelope. I was one of the anonymous sources who provided information to Belmont's investigation. My evidence helped establish the pattern that got Sterling fired. Her head snapped up. "You?" "I protected myself and helped take down someone who'd been abusing his position for years. You were collateral damage in his fall, not mine." I stood up and walked to the door. Opened it. The hallway light spilled into the apartment. "You need to leave, please." She stood up, shaking. "I have nowhere to go. No job, no friends, no money. I made a mistake. I was manipulated. I'll do anything." "You weren't manipulated into sabotaging my career," I said evenly. "Sterling didn't make you do that. You chose to share that information. You chose to trust him over protecting what we built together. Those were your decisions. I was stupid and confused and you have to live with that. I'm not your safety net. I'm not your way back to stability. You burned this bridge yourself." She took a step toward me. "I love you. I know I don't deserve to say that, but you loved what I provided. Stability. Security. Someone who'd catch you when you fell. But you only remember that now because the person you thought was better didn't catch you." I shook my head. "That's not love. That's convenience. Please don't do this." "I'm not doing anything. This is what you did. You're just finally seeing the consequences." She stood in the doorway, tears streaming, making herself smaller like it would change my mind. "Go, Vivian." She opened her mouth to say something else, but no words came out. Just a choked sound that might have been my name. Then she walked past me into the hallway. I closed the door. Locked it. Heard her footsteps fade down the corridor. The apartment was quiet. I looked around at the life I'd built, the promotion I'd earned, the peace I'd fought for, the clarity I'd gained. Some people think regret is an emotion. Something you feel and move past. I know better. Regret is a consequence. And Vivian would carry hers a lot longer than she carried my ring. I went back to my office and finished planning my weekend trip to the mountains. The door stayed closed. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you really like our videos, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Have a great day.